Little did I know that this trip was gonna be a total fail, and I take full responsibility for that. Let me show you how cool I thought I was. We are back in the mountains, gonna do another winter survival camp out tonight. It's been a few weeks since our last winter survival camp out. The landscape has definitely changed a little bit. We've been walking for about half an hour now. For one thing, it is much, much colder. Before we lost cell phone service, it was 5 degrees when I last checked, and it said it feels like it's -2 degrees. That's quite a bit different from our last trip where it was 32 degrees. And there's no clouds at all today. So I think that's why it's much colder. But good thing is there's sunshine and it's not snowing on us. So hopefully that will help us be a little bit more efficient with our time building our shelter. We're not building an igloo out of this stuff. This is powder, dude. Oh my gosh. Well, our focus on this trip is a little bit different. We want to make more of a rigid structure because we want to be able to build most of it this trip. And then on our next trip in about a month, we want to be able to come up here, finish off the shelter, take some of my younger kids with us. I don't want to bring them out here when we're just building the shelter because that's way too much to worry about and keep track of. But if I have a shelter mostly built to where we can just kind of upgrade it on the next trip, then that'll be so much better. The first ice event of the trip. The Nalgene bottle is frozen on the top.
I guess you're gonna need to use a machete.
So our focus right now is to find a spot where we can see lots of dead trees as a good means to make our shelter. You see that? That's a frozen river, I think. That's a good root ball.
Where's the tree?
I think it's underneath there. The snow's not going down much where my son is stepping, but every step I take, it's going to my calves. Hey, there's a campfire.
Hey, there's lots of things. We could really put that right there. We have to cross here.
All right, our little adventure to check out this spot turned out to be really good. Kept our packs right here so we don't have to pack them around. Plus there's lots of dead trees around that we can cut down to use for our shelter. Our trail is kind of right down there. We're gonna do kind of a half hexagon shape right here. Bed right here, bed right here, bed right here. And then our fire will be right here. We'll have a big wall behind it. So first thing we have to do is clear out all the snow around here. Put a fire right here to try to melt all the residual snow. And then we can start building our shelter. We're tag teaming this one. We gotta carry this back to camp. It's 1 p.m. We've been hard at it for an hour, and I just had to get something to drink because as I was chopping some branches off of a tree, a piece of bark fell into my mouth, and I thought I got it out, but I ended up swallowing it. I need to get some water, but it's so cold. My Nalgene water bottle is kind of frozen. Still good, but frozen. I started to cut down this little grouping of trees, and when I was cutting it, the snow started to fall on my jacket, and I didn't want my other jacket, which is more absorbent, to get wet. I cannot afford to get wet tonight because it is going to be so cold. So I had to go change into my kind of waterproof jacket. It is so cold out here that when I walked across the stream, get to our little campsite, it's a little bit muddy, and the mud stuck to my boots. And by the time I walked 50 feet to get to our campsite, the mud froze to my boots. So crazy. A little tangled up here. One, two, three. Got 5 trees so far. So my sons and I, we kind of tag teamed it. I went to go chop down some trees so that we can use it for our shelter and for firewood. Meanwhile, my boys cleaned out this whole area. We're gonna do a campfire here first to melt all the residual snow, try to expand the area. We can start building our shelter once we get some coals going. Pretty nice work, man. This is what I was talking about. The mud stuck to my snowshoe cleats. Now I feel like I'm walking on clogs because it's just solid ice.
Wait, really?
We're gonna use one of these bricks instead. There's just not much dry stuff available, and it's too cold to worry about trying to be primitive about this. Try and keep your finger on the red button. There you go.
Oh, that's how you're supposed to do it. Make it look light.
We knew we were gonna be building the shelter a lot today, so we needed something easy for lunch. What better than a little bit of chili? We can just put it right on the coals, let it boil, and then eat right out of the can. I'm gonna pull some coals out. Open the lid up. I'm not gonna open the lid up all the way. I don't want all the ashes to get in there. Oh, that's hot. Okay, just gonna let that boil for a little bit. All good. We're still trying to clear out this whole area. We have a lot of coals. I'm just gonna move these coals over here, try and get this ground a little bit thawed out. We've got plenty of branches, so I'm not worried about that. Chili.
It never tasted so good in 5 hours. It's so good.
I think the chili's ready. It is boiling. Oh, it's gonna be so good. Feels like my contacts are freezing a little bit. And this cooked super fast on the coals too. That was nice. I have a feeling this is like crazy hot. No, it's actually perfect temperature. It's just really cold outside. Oh, that's good. Still trying to get campfire to go and spread out this area, warm up the ground a little bit before we built our shelter on it. Got another tree. If I walk through the water just a little bit, like 2 steps, and then I sit anywhere, it froze. Solid ice. There's some ice on the creek next to us. There's absolutely nothing easy about moving these trees. They are so heavy. And with the limbs on them still, they're so awkward. We don't want to cut the limbs off here where we're not close to our campsite, because then we have to just make a ton of trips to pick up all the branches to put in the fire. So it just makes it awkward to carry the whole tree. 2 o'clock, we got probably 3 more hours of daylight trying to carry this tree here. Luckily, our snowshoes have kind of made a trail. Otherwise, we'd be trying to stomp through 4 feet of snow. Our snowshoes at least helped to blaze a trail, and now it's firm. So now we can somewhat walk through with our boots. The goal is to just get as many logs as we can to the campsite. We can always build the shelter tonight, but it's not as easy to get logs at nighttime. The chopping man. Dang, dude. You're a chopping machine. Teamwork makes the dream work. This is hard work. That's really hit the spot though. It's about 3:30. We're only cutting down the dead trees, which will actually help out in the long run, because then it reduces the risk of wildfires down the road. A lot of these pine trees are dead because we've got some kind of beetle that's coming around. You can see right here, got a beetle that came in there and killed this grouping of trees right here. We're gonna use this for our shelter. It's so cold here. My son asked me if I got hurt in my face. Nope. It's so cold out here that the exhaust from my nose is freezing on my beard. We got 2 more trees and then we're gonna start building our, I keep wanting to call it a fort, our shelter though. There we go. We checked and the temperature is like 2 degrees. That was half an hour ago. There's no more sun shining on us. So we're just gonna finish building our shelter. I'm gonna put a thing in front of the fire to try and get the heat into our shelter. Get some logs dried out for our fire. That should be cool. Now we're gonna put some pieces across it this way, and then lay our tarp across the top. Right there. Did I make the shelter too big? I might have made the shelter a little bit too big for the tarp. Okay. Pull it tight.
Right.
And pull it that way. It is a little bit too big, so we're going to scrunch this a little bit. Well, this is our shelter. We improvised a little bit. We just ran out of time and weren't able to get enough logs. And our tarp is a little bit too small too. So it's 0 degrees. So we're gonna call it and actually head back home, and we'll hopefully come up on like a Saturday and finish building it. This was definitely a good learning experience. We had fun. Wait, That was it? I thought this was a camping video in the snow. Well, you're right. I messed up big time, and I wanted to go over what we could have done better because we had every intention of staying overnight in the mountains. I just didn't plan very good with our time. I felt like it was really important for me to post this video because I wanted to share a failure we had. Most of the videos I've seen are all successes in regards to overnight camping and shelter building. Not every camping experience or shelter building experience is a success. I 100% take full responsibility for the fact that we couldn't stay out overnight. Now, granted, this was our second time trying to do a winter survival camp out. The first time was a huge success, and I guess I got a little bit too overconfident. This trip was much different from our first one. On our first camping trip, our focus was just to build a really easy, simple shelter that we could at least survive the night in. And on our second camping trip, we wanted to have more of a semi-permanent structure. I wanted it to stay up for at least a month so that I would have time to bring up some of my other kids. They're much younger and they just can't help as much with cutting down trees and building a shelter. They're more there just to have fun, which is awesome. I want them to be a part of this. As far as shelter building and survival camping in the winter, I just don't have enough experience where I felt comfortable bringing them with me. So I wanted to recap some of the mistakes that we made. Number one is one of my sons got way too cold. And once he got cold, he just lost all motivation to try and stay out there. This happened as soon as the sun went down. Even though the temperature only dropped a few degrees, it felt like it dropped 20 or 30 degrees. So we just weren't prepared. We didn't have enough logs to be able to use for heat over the nighttime. We walked maybe 20 feet away from the fire. I started to shiver immediately. From our first camping trip, taking down our shelter probably took 10 minutes. So for this camping trip, I should have focused more on building a really simple shelter that would at least get us to survive overnight. And then after breakfast the next day, we would have had more time to build a more substantial structure for my kids coming out the next time. I also should have stopped more often to see how my boys were doing comfort-wise and being cold. I feel like if I would have stopped earlier and changed out my son's socks, put some foot warmers in his boots, made sure his hands were warm, we would have had more success. You may have noticed, but in the video, my speech was slurred because it was so cold. Absorbent, my Davinci water bottle. We don't want to cut the limbs off here. And everything was frozen. Once it got dark, my idea was to go make some hot chocolate. So I went to go get our Nalgene bottles frozen solid. And throughout the day, I had some Laffy Taffy in my pocket. It was frozen. Every time I bit down, it would crunch. When we got home, I took the steaks out of our backpacks, frozen solid. Just a huge learning experience about how much colder it really feels when it's 5 degrees versus 32 degrees. We still had a great time and we learned a lot, and it was still a memorable experience for my boys. Since then, they have asked when we're going to go camping again. This didn't break us, and we definitely have more trips planned. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one. We made it back to the truck. It's like 7 o'clock. My son's gloves are legit.
See? Frozen as a popsicle.